Welcome, humans, and thank you for tuning in to the One Seed Nation broadcast. My name is Philip Reese, and as always, I'm burdened with the truth. This is the Godzilla movie discussion. So I'm going to go ahead and warn you now, if you haven't seen the Godzilla movie, go to the theaters and check it out before watching this video. It's totally worth your time. You might even want to see it twice. It was an awesome movie. So go there first before you watch this. This is a spoiler-filled movie review and discussion. In-depth detail about all the different plot pivot points and everything that the movie was is going to be discussed in this video. So please go check out the movie first. And if you want to see a spoiler-free review, check out my other shorter Godzilla movie review video. To see some of my quick thoughts about the movie. It's definitely worth seeing. Anyway, first, before we get started, I wanted to look at, this is the third day that the movie has been out in theaters. And so far, tracking here at boxofficemojo.com, you can see that it is the second largest debut in the year 2014, beating past Spider-Man, which I'm not too surprised. People were kind of burned out on Spider-Man. I mean, this is their fifth one in 12 years. And just right behind by like $2 or $3 million of Captain America Winter Soldier, which is actually a really, really good movie. It's still in theaters, so definitely go check that out if you haven't seen it either. But that's just really, really bodes well for Godzilla in the sense that like it did twice as much as Pacific Rim, which opened up last July, which is sad for me because I actually like Pacific Rim quite a bit. And it even did better than like World War Z did when that was debuted in the theaters, so that's exciting. In its 3 days that Godzilla's been out, it has made more money than Star Trek Into Darkness made 4 days in its running. So Legendary Films is definitely excited about this launch. I definitely see a sequel on the way, probably out by 2017. Hopefully sooner, but you never know. In more disturbing news, Frozen has held on to its first place position in Japan for its 10th weekend in a row. It now ranks the 6th of all time. There with $179 million in Japan alone. And on a worldwide basis, Frozen it has passed its $1.2 billion mark. Billion. And it should move up to its 5th place position of all time, nudging past Iron Man 3. It's almost June, and people are still seeing this movie in theaters. Stop buying Frozen tickets. Please stop buying Frozen tickets. Anyway, I'm sorry, that was just a little rant. I just can't believe it's... Anyway, I mean, Iron Man 3 was a really crappy movie. Don't get me wrong. But I don't think Iron Man 3 deserved to be up there on the list. But Frozen shouldn't even be in the top 100. Anyway. So Godzilla is going to continue raking in money. It should probably pass that $400 million mark easily, I think. And then, of course, it's going to be released in China in June and Japan in July. That makes me sad. It's like, that's where it's from. Why should... It doesn't matter. It'll come out, and they'll adore the movie, as they should. But let's start about the actual Godzilla movie discussion. For me, I love the movie. I gave it if you watched my review. If you haven't watched my review, and you haven't seen the movie, stop now. Do not watch any further. Okay? You've been warned. But in my review, I gave it a 73 out of 100. And which is a pretty good score for me. I judge things as how much more room for improvement is there So I know in American schools, a 73 sounds like a D, but it's not a D by any means. 73 is a pretty good score. And I'll start off talking about what I thought about the way Godzilla looked. I thought he looked awesome. Of course he looked more real in this iteration than any other movie before. He just looked realistic. He looked like, hey, if there was a prehistoric dinosaur coming out of the water and it's been millions of years old, this is it. I mean, he looked legit, and he looked awesome. And the scale was great. He could go bigger in my book, but I always like really big. But he was big, and he looked great. So I was very happy with that. I know a lot of people, when the early reports are coming out, were kind of concerned about like the way his feet looked and how he kind of looked like overweight or something. I was like, nah, he needs to look big, not some lean iguana roaming the cities of New York streets and no, none of that. He was a meaty guy, but he was awesome. So I really liked that. I really liked the way the Mutos looked. I normally don't like a lot of the new designs of monsters that have been coming out, and like even if they're like small size, like in Starship Troopers, you know, like I hate that buggy kind of look where everything looks just like slimy and falling apart. No thanks. But this Muto, they both looked really slick, and it wasn't overwhelming. Like you could look at it and kind of tell what was going on in the creature design. You know, I could come close. I'm a terrible artist, but I could come close to drawing a Muto way before I could draw like one of the Pacific Rim monsters or like the Kaiju or anything like that. So I just thought it was a very organized, symmetrical, kind of a clean design, and it was still fresh. I know a lot of critics were saying that it had kind of a Geiger-esque look to it, which is the creator of like the Aliens designs and all that. Not really. I mean, so what? They're biological. What? They have eggs. They still didn't look erotic. They looked fine to me. So, they looked original, and they looked clean and awesome and scary. So, I love the Mutos. Great job with that. But I take issue with the movie in the characters. Like, starting off with Bryan Cranston's character, he nailed it out of the park. He nailed it out of the park, and so did the character that played his wife, which was played by Juliette Binoche. And I just thought, gosh, you know, that chemistry is there. That character development is there, and I would love to go through this story by their side. And I actually teared up when they parted ways, and he had to close the door on her, and then they just have their last little moment sharing, you know, that goodbye moment through the glass. That was a very powerful moment. And for me, when I go into a movie, I very quickly step into the realm of believing. And I give the director and the studio 100% of like that belief right off the bat. You don't have to win me over at the beginning of a movie. I'm already there. I bought the tickets to go into the theater. This is a real world for me. I'm in there. I'm fully believing and invested in everything. So, and these characters, they looked like a real family. They love each other. It's his birthday. You know, it's a sweet moment. I really appreciated the way the movie started off. Unfortunately, though, no, it's okay that they killed her off. I totally see, hey, there's strength in that. They can go in a great direction with it. And they continue to do really well with the movie and the direction. Seeing Aaron Taylor Johnson's character grow up, you know, they did that shot where like it shows him as a kid and it shows him, you know, it's just like letting you know, hey, 15 years later he's an adult now, and you see him as kind of like this stone cold like kid who probably wasn't too fond of his childhood, and that's fine. Like I see that in the character. I'm not going to complain. I know a lot of people have been complaining that he's just been kind of like this the whole movie. Well, we'll get to that later. But at first, you know, it was believable and acceptable. And then he goes to Japan, and the chemistry that he had with his wife, played by Elizabeth Olsen, and then their son, I really enjoyed that scene where the three of them are together and they felt like a family. Happy to see him return home after being in the military, being out on doing whatever he was doing. And just glad to see him home. I felt like that was a family I could watch in the movie. And then when he goes back to Japan, I thought the scenes are great. I didn't have any trouble at all with the characters, and it was obviously because Bryan Cranston was there, and you could feel the tension between the two characters. They obviously weren't, getting along very well, and it felt like Bryan Cranston's character needed kind of like to prove himself, and he was desperate for that. He was at a point where he was like desperate for his son's approval. And I think that's a very beautiful and sad place for that character to be in. And that's a great place for a character to be in. You don't really see that in movies a lot, where like the father is trying to earn the son's approval. It had some major potential there. And then of course the unveiling of the Mutos, all this happens. All those scenes are great. I love the lighting effects they do, and that starts to hatch and come forth, and all of that, everything that happened in Japan was like coasting perfect. It's just great. Music, design, characterization, suspense, the whole thing. It's just brilliantly presented. This is where the movie went sour. Okay, I was okay with killing off Bryan Cranston. That's fine with me. I know people are like, oh, no, look, if you did it right, but they did it wrong. It should have been this really powerful moment where there's like this reconciliation that's taking place. Bryan Cranston, I feel like, did his part. And strangely enough, I feel like Aaron Taylor Johnson probably did his part. I won't say it's bad acting. I think he was doing exactly what he was told to do. Because if it was bad acting, then he would have said some lines that fell out of place. But he didn't really even say anything. He just kind of like stared down at his dying father. And I think all he said in return was just take care of your family. And then he chokes out. And it's kind of like, it's okay that he's dead, but that wasn't really a powerful moment at all. Because it didn't seem to change, I guess his name was Ford Brody. It didn't seem to change like his character. He just seemed to just kind of, and I think that's a problem with the direction, which is weird to me, because I saw Monsters. I felt like that was a very character-driven movie. Definitely good movie. And I was just surprised, because I thought that was one of Gareth Edwards' strengths. And so I thought, okay, maybe he's trying to be strong right now. And he doesn't have time to explore these emotions. And so later in the movie, when he finally gets through to his wife, and she's like at work at the hospital or something, and he finally gets through to her, and they talk for the first time after all this disaster stuff starts happening, I thought that would have been a perfect moment for him to break down and say, my dad was right all along. He was right all along. And him to like kind of break down, or like to realize, oh my gosh, this whole time I've kind of abandoned my father. And he was right all along. And I don't know. They didn't do anything with that moment either. And I don't know, they just kind of killed it. And they left that Ford Brody character, played by Aaron Taylor Johnson, kind of on his own devices for like the rest of the movie. Like, they didn't bring him back with his family, which I liked their chemistry and they could have done something with. He was just alone with a bunch of no-name characters that died frequently. I mean, he meets up with a group of guys that are transporting a bomb. They all die. He's not good alone, okay? If Castaway, the movie, if they had casted him instead of Tom Hanks, it would have been the worst movie of all time. I mean, he's just... And if I'm wrong, it's something wrong with the direction, like I was saying earlier. So I don't know. That was disappointing. for me anyway. Humor, I wasn't really looking for humor in the movie, and there was some moments that was funny, like, when Elizabeth Olsen's telling her son to turn off the TV, stop watching TV, go to bed, and he's watching, like, the world being destroyed. It was funny. It was also funny when the Vegas scene happened, and they're, like, in the casinos, and you can hear everyone gambling around, and the news feed is, like, hanging up in the bar, like, in the TV, and you see the Muto, like, coming, and then the power goes out, and then it comes through the ceiling. There were some funny moments, but it wasn't really a funny movie, honestly. But that's fine. It doesn't have to be. I think humor is a good tool to build characters and character development, and that was something that was lacking in the movie. So they probably could have used it a little bit. What did I think about the pace? I heard a lot of critics complaining about the pacing of the movie. I actually thought I liked the pace. I didn't want Godzilla to be unveiled right off the gate. I wanted that teasing flow of the movie. It was great. It was perfect, and that's what I was wanting. I think for me, what I expect from a Godzilla movie is kind of to be a little bit terrified. And if you go to Blockbuster, or I guess that's gone now. If you go on Netflix or whatever, and you're looking at, like, the covers of movies, and you go to, like, a horror movie, and you see the picture of the monster on the cover of the movie, it's a terrible movie. That's just the way it is. You don't want... Your imagination is the scariest thing. The unknown is the scariest thing. And I wanted to be scared in this movie. And I don't think I ever was. There was one scene that gave me... Well, two scenes. Two scenes that gave me chills. The first one was in Hawaii when Aaron Taylor Johnson was on the train with that little... I guess he was Japanese or Hawaiian. The little kid. I think he was Japanese. And they were on that train. And they were, like, gliding along, and to the right, like, and that's one thing, cinematography was great. Everything was shot from, like, people's perspectives. That grounds it into reality, and it can make it scary, too. Because it's like, you want to see more, but things get in the way, and it's like, dang it, those trees, I wanted to, something's coming at me, and now because we're moving, I can't see it anymore. Like, that stuff's scary. And they showed the Muto, like, kind of, like, crawling over the rails and the tracks up in the front. And that scene was like, oh gosh, that's just creepy as crap. That's creepy. And that's awesome. That's awesome. And then the other creepy scene was in San Francisco, where the paratroopers have landed on the street, and they're, like, in between the Godzilla and one of the Mutos. And you can see... you can't see Godzilla. You see, like, his tail kind of, like, sweep over to the right, and then recedes back into the darkness, and everything gets, like, totally silent. And then that the score that by Alexander Desplat, it, like, piano, it's just up high, like high register, and then it, like, comes through the smoke. Oh man, that was awesome. But yeah, so the pacing was good. They didn't unveil too much too fast. But during that pacing, that's when we needed character development, and there wasn't any. Awful. It's like, it's pretty disappointing, actually. It really is. Anyway, yeah, so that brings me to cinematography, which really makes things... cinematography can make or break a movie, especially a disaster movie, I think. More so than anything. And they did it right in this movie. They didn't unveil too much, and everything was from that grounded perspective, which is brilliant. Let's see, the fight scenes in the movie, if that's really your thing, which I don't really care about so much. Like, I don't care if I get to see it all. Like, I don't mind bits and pieces, and, like, them stepping behind a building and fighting and struggling behind the building, and you see them popping out. Like, I don't really care. It's like, wow, he did a 1-2 punch. Like, I'm not I don't care about that. I just want to see a big wrestle and mass destruction and terror. That's what I want to see, and it looked real. And this movie did that. It looked awesome. So the fighting is great. I think I read somewhere that Godzilla is only viewed about 26 minutes in the film total, and probably half of those minutes aren't him in full picture. Like, there might just be his spine sticking out of the water, or his foot like stomping on an airplane. Just I don't think he stomped on an airplane, but at the airport, Anyway, yeah, the fight scenes are good. Let's see, where was I? I lost my spot here. I don't think. Okay, so here comes one of my big disappointments. Well, first of all, the CGI was awesome in the movie. It's probably the best I've seen, except for Avatar. Avatar just hasn't been beat yet. But I mean, like, a lot of the issues I take with, like, the Marvel movies, especially like Iron Man 3 or Avengers, is like things that are supposed to be transparent look awful. I mean, they look like crap, like smoke or dust, debris, tarp. Like, if they have, like, where the windows break out on top of Stark's tower, and they have, like, the little plastic tarps, like, where the windows are missing, they look just like crap. It's like, look, guys, I know you think CGI saves you money in most situations, but in this case, just buy some freaking tarp from Lowe's Depot and hang it up, because it looked awful. Anyway, in this movie, I had, like, no complaints for the CGI, except for when Godzilla swam under the battleship. I didn't think I didn't think he should. There was a lot of detail that I didn't think belonged there, but that's nitpicking, honestly. It looks great. It looks brilliant. And that's one thing that Gareth Edwards is really good at. He's a visual artist, so. Alright, so here's the big beef with the movie, though. Okay, so I've already been kind of disappointed with the characters. The trailer was misleading. Like, extremely misleading. Like, Bryan Cranston was right when he's like, "You have no idea what's out there. You have no idea what's coming." Like, you're right. I thought it was Godzilla that was coming. No, he was coming to save the day. And they show a giant, like, hole blown out of a building, like a skyscraper. Obviously caused by Godzilla's breath, right? Obviously caused by the nuclear blast from his breath. Oh, no, that was caused by... Oh, wait, it wasn't in the movie. The trailer shows Godzilla destruction. It's not in the movie. Godzilla does everything he can to save people. I know you said, no, he doesn't. Remember in Hawaii when he came out of the water? He didn't have a choice. He came out of the water, and I think that was also exaggerated a little bit, if you want to be realistic. But, no. He's trying to swim under the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco, and he can't because it's too shallow. And, like, you see him literally try and dig under a battleship to get under it. You see his tail go up. He's trying to get under it. And he can't, and he's just kind of like sitting there. And then all these missiles come, and the guy's like, wait, there's people on the bridge. And so guess what? Godzilla saves the day. He sits up, so all the missiles go into his side. He's a friendly neighborhood dinosaur. That's who Godzilla was in this movie. He was your friendly neighborhood dinosaur. It's a good movie, isn't it? Yeah. And then the kids are trapped on the bus because, like, a human missile, and there's nothing that had anything to do with Godzilla. A missile, like, hits the little suspension cables on the bridge, and it, like, crosses the road. It's, like, this big wide around, and the bus is stuck. Who saves the day? It's not the military. It's not the bus driver with some cool maneuvers. No, Godzilla goes out of his way to pull the cable so that he can drive. He pulls the cable off to the side with his hand. That's why he called the bridge. And then he gets knocked into the bridge by some oncoming missiles that hit him in the head. He gets knocked through the bridge, and it's like, ugh, I'm sorry. That's not the Godzilla I want. Gareth Edwards is obviously like a 1970s Godzilla fanboy. Which, I mean, me growing up, I was too, but I grew up. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I know Gareth Edwards is going to watch this, and I respect you. I know he's going to watch it. Without a doubt. I'm that big, I know. I respect you as a filmmaker. I think you've got some of the best visionary talent in in Hollywood, but come on, do we really want a 1970 Godzilla who dances and flies and waves goodbye and talks? No thanks. No thanks. No, I want 1954 Godzilla. Okay, maybe not that serious. That was pretty dark. Give me like a 1984 Godzilla that's smart and not stupid. Okay, the 1984 Godzilla was like dumber than a bird. The movie was pretty crap. I mean, growing up it was one of my favorites, but it was awful if you look at and watch it. If you watch it today and you see like him being led by a bunch of birds. No, thank you. No, thank you. I think the scariest Godzilla I ever looked was that, I think it was like a 2004 movie. I forgot what it's... The one in particular was like the Godzilla versus Ghidorah and Mothra, or Ghidorah and Mothra. Godzilla versus King Ghidorah and Mothra. It's like 2004, I think. It's when he's got the white eyes, and he's like freaking scary. Okay, that's when he looked the best, in my opinion. Not realistic, obviously. And of course the movie's crap, because it's Toho. I know I'm going to piss off a lot of fans, but let's face it, their characters, everything, it's just too cheesy for me. Too campy. I want terror, and I want realistic, and that's what I was hoping with this movie, and that's not what we get. Instead, we get your friendly neighborhood dinosaur who does everything he can to save the city. So that's what happens in the movie. That's why it took off points for me. It doesn't mean that Gareth Edwards isn't a good movie maker, because that's what he intended to do. See, if that's your thing, like my wife, she thought that was great. She totally loved that Godzilla was this good guy. And so, of course, she scores the movie higher than I would, which is fine. If that's your thing, then more to you. That's just not my thing. That's just not my thing. I wanted Godzilla to be this menacing force of nature, which he isn't. He's not a force of nature in this movie. If he was a force of nature, well, maybe he is. You could argue that he is. He's millions of years old, which is something I totally loved about the movie. I was very concerned with the trailers when you see like the huge structure of bones, like, and the scientists are like exploring it. That's in the Philippine mines. I was like, oh no, is this like Godzilla's mom or dad? Are they gonna do that? No, it was just some other prehistoric like whale thing or something. Godzilla is like millions of years old. Yes. They tried to kill it in 1954 at Bikini Atoll with those nuclear tests. Yes, that's epic. That's the best origin story for Godzilla yet, in my opinion. That gives him kind of that force of nature feel to it, but no, he's your friendly neighborhood dinosaur, which, I mean, that makes a lot of sense, you know. Anyway, so another thing I did like was like the Monarch program and how the radiation fed prehistoric beings, and that like in the prehistoric world, history of the world was just more radioactive, and that seemed really fresh to me. Like, I don't think I'd ever really come across that kind of narrative before in any stories, and it really kind of made sense, and it didn't bother me. It was like, yeah, you're bringing me along. I am believing this story now. I mean, this is great. This is awesome. And then, of course, you know, when the Philippine miners, like, erected all of that and they brought in the air and it, like, kind of catalyzed some of the radiation and the eggs started hatching, like, all that, thumbs up. That was a plus for me. Yeah, but Godzilla being a good guy, man, that's awful. He avoided ships intentionally. Saving the bus. Let's see. And then the music, like when the building fell on Godzilla, and they did like that, the strings and everything was really like, oh, Godzilla. And then the way like he looks at Aaron Taylor Johnson, like that's another thing. I don't want Godzilla to notice people. People aren't big enough or important enough for Godzilla to notice. And he like stared at him and he's like, I'm trying so hard, man. And then he like disappears, like lays his head down. And then Aaron Taylor Johnson just stares at it like, I mean, look it up online. You see this face he makes. And he's staring at Godzilla in the face and he's just like, I don't know. Green screens, they're hard to act with, I guess. And then the people cheering and Godzilla leaving and just savior of the city. Your friendly neighborhood dinosaur. No thank you. No thank you. Anyway, folks, that's my beef with the movie. Leave your comments below in the bottom. Let me know kind of how you rated the movie. If you're a Godzilla fan like myself, be honest is all I'm going to ask. Be honest with yourself. I mean, I don't know. I knew a lot of Godzilla fans like when the 98 version came out. Everyone initially off the bat, after watching the movie, was like, it was great! Because they were hoping... I don't know what they were hoping. I automatically hated that movie. I actually did go see it in theaters, and I kind of regret it. I hate that I gave them my money, but I was too much of a Godzilla fan not to. But I knew it was going to be crap. Because it was an iguana that eats fish and can be tempted and trapped by fish and then taken down by a couple missiles. It was not Godzilla. I don't even think he deserves the name Zilla. I know that's what people call him. That's just too similar to Godzilla for my taste. But anyway, so yeah, leave your comments below in the bottom. I'd love to kind of further communicate. And I'll be coming out with more videos. X-Men Days of Future Past is coming out next Friday, Thursday night, early viewing. And I've heard from a couple sources of people who've already seen it, who had that early screenings, and they're not really allowed to talk about it yet, but they said it's amazing. Comparing it with, like, Captain America 2, amazing. Which is saying a lot for an X-Men movie. So, definitely go check that out in theaters, and I will come out with a review of that Thursday night, so... Till next time, just remember, everything I say here is fact.